Could you explain the nightly erection stuff? Can you expound on that for all of us?
My mom is here. I'm back on my old stomping grounds, and it's the third day since I've been back home. I went to my old house, I went to my childhood grade school, I went to my high school, visited some neighbors, hung out with my parents, and just the deep reflection that accompanies going back home and taking stock of what's happened in life. I'm now going to meet up with a few hundred people in Utah. Most of them are Mormon, so my former faith. And I don't have the contours of the room. I don't know what they think. I don't know how they feel. I don't know what's going to be offensive. So this could either be disastrous or this could be neutral or be positive. Because I've been accustomed to speaking around the world, and I generally have a feel for where people are at. I've built up intuitions with reading comments online and hearing reactions, of course, from haters to supporters. And here I just have no bearing. And so I'm going into this blind. I really want this to go well. I'm very invested in this going well. So normally I walk into this with a lot of confidence, and today I'm feeling like I don't really know what I'm walking into.
All over the world, this individual has become pretty infamous for many different things. And my favorite is when I invite people to events like this and seeing the reaction, because everyone has an opinion of what Brian's up to. My favorite was my mom's question, who was, is that the guy having all those erections at night? So we're gonna learn a lot today, and I hope you ask some questions, Mom. I really do. Yep.
Hi, everyone. Really nice to see you. I spent the past few days in Utah here revisiting my stomping ground. So going to my old home and schools and friends. And so it's been a really wonderful experience to collide my different worlds. I'm in a very pensive disposition about life and where I was and where I am.
What I've observed in you and your protocol is this incredible mindset and mind control, even to the point where I've heard you say that the protocol, the Blueprint protocol, is the boss over your brain. Can you speak to the details of developing that mindset, especially from having previously experienced depression?
I like the thought experiment that if you lived in the year of 1870 and the future could whisper into your ear, hey, there are these new ideas about these microscopic objects that are the source of infection. They're called germs. And you can't see them with the naked eye, but that's what's happening when doctors deliver babies and they don't wash their hands in between, or it's what happens when you perform surgery and you don't wash the instruments. Now, if you live in the 1870s, your natural disposition might be, that's crazy. I mean, that's weird. You're telling me that something I can't see is the source of this infection and causing death. Now, if you're open-minded, you might say, okay, that sounds weird. It challenges many of the notions I understand about reality, but I'm going to be open to this concept. And we know throughout history that this has repeated itself all through time, that the future is always present. Right now, it's present. And the majority of our ideas are representations of dead people, and we're living them out, but we treat them as universal truth. And so the question is right now, if the future could whisper into our ear right now, what would they say? And if they said something, would we bat it down and say, that's probably not possible? Now, some things are probably true, but other things might stick. And so with this idea on Blueprint, what I tried to say is if the future could talk to us, what they might say is that we have reached a point of technological and medical progress where death is no longer inevitable, or at least we might be able to radically extend how long and how well we live. And so the whisper is, don't die. Above all things, don't die. But to me, that's really the culmination of this moment that we all exist.
Thank you.
I didn't even answer your question.
I love it, though. Being future-focused is what I'm hearing from you. Essentially helped you to develop this mindset and writing the future in the way that you want to. Kind of going into like the future store and putting into your basket whatever you would want.
Yes, like the practical answer to your question is what I wanted to show with Blueprint is I wanted to show that we could build an algorithm that could take better care of me than I can myself. And so Homo sapiens have been the dominant form of intelligence for 200,000 years. We reign supreme with intelligence. And there's a new form of intelligence in the form of artificial intelligence that is becoming better every day and doing the things that we do. So when it drives our cars, we're like, that's cool because it's potentially safer. When it flies our airplanes, when it reads images for cancer imaging, we give thumbs up. Or when it drives our, get us to a destination. And what I was trying to say is, it's now potentially in the realm of what we consider to be the most sacred of all things, which is deciding what to eat, when to go to bed, what nutrition to put in my body. And even though Blueprint is very analog in its implementation, I wanted to show that just like when the first message with the telegraph was sent, the Pony Express was dead. Now, it was sad that people were no longer going to ride horses to deliver mail, but the telegraph was making it obsolete. First time GPS allowed arrival at a new destination, maps on the lap were dead. And so what I'm basically saying with Blueprint in its most extreme form is the mind as the primary source of intelligence to manage our health and wellness is in its final stages. And this new algorithmic inputs are now going to run our lives. So if you think about it from a very practical sense, no one here right now is thinking about breathing. Now you are, but you weren't before. It just, it just happens. No one thought this morning when you ate food about digestion. It just happened. And so what I'm suggesting is this extension of autonomy is going to go further and further to maintain, as perfect health as we can. And so that's what we've tried to demonstrate in an analog form, is that the technology is here and that a new era has landed.
We read about how you were striving to live to 200 years old. Obviously on your chest, we don't want to die at all. Do you believe that the medical technology is present and here today for you to accomplish that goal of 200 years? Or are we banking on a medical advancement that has yet to occur in order to hit that goal?
Homo sapiens have been able to reliably, with some degree of accuracy, predict the future for 200,000 years, where you can say, okay, I'm born into this existence, I can see what previous generations did before me, I can model out what my life is likely going to be. In the 1990s, you could say, in the US, I'm going to finish high school, I'll go to college, I'll learn this discipline, have a career, retire at 65, and you can basically plan out your life. And we're now in a situation where we cannot plan more than 3 months. It's the first time in the history of civilization that intelligence has a wall of fog. We can't see it. And my son right now, he just went into his first year of school. He has 4 years of school. That's insane what the world is going to be like. What does he study? Now, he's looking at math, physics, and CS, and it's kind of like, maybe we still care about those things. Maybe we humans still have it, but like, how do you even know? And so this idea that we would map 200 years from now is impossible. We can't do 3 months. And that has a really serious practical and philosophical invitation, where we're transitioning from a species of knowing things to a species of not knowing. And that's happening so fast. So we have approached reality from a first principles perspective. We acquire knowledge, we try to make few assumptions, we stack it, and we then do our behaviors and have these feedback loops. And now we're walking into the unknown, unable to do that process. And it's a exact opposite way of being as we have been. So we derive security and confidence from knowing. And when we don't know, we feel fear, and we pause and we stutter step. And so in this case of the 200-year goal, I think it is an interesting frame. It triggers all these defense mechanisms where people will want to shoot it down. They want to kill the idea because they'll say, I'm going to be bored. I don't know what to do. I would rather live a robust 65-year life than I would a boring 200-year life. And so humans have all these conditional responses. And I imagine in this situation, if we're talking to Homo erectus 1 million years ago, and we say, Homo erectus, how's it going? You have an axe. What do you imagine of life? And they're thinking, like, I've already slayed all the animals in the area. I would kind of be bored. But Homo erectus would not be able to talk about all the things we're doing today, like have a magic box in front of you that allows you to talk to any human at any time of the day and to create new forms of intelligence. And so the question is, in this moment, are we Homo erectus? We don't think we are. We think we're the apex of intelligence, but maybe we are. And so maybe we know nothing about what our future preferences or opinions or wants may be. And this is the state of unknowing, is our minds desperately want to know, And to me, this is like the layered challenge and opportunity we all have, because it's kind of counterintuitive to how things are today for us.
Yeah, I think one of my philosophical beliefs is that anyone can have an opinion on how long they would want to live. I think that it would be ultimately a human choice for us to be able to decide how long we want to live, and not to have disease or death overtake us unwillingly. I've been thinking about the relative aging of our body versus our brain. And one of the things that I've been worried about is, let's say that Blueprint works and we can get to 100 years old and you can be looking just like you're looking now or even younger. Is there any type of entropy in how the brain is structured that imposes some physical limitation that we should be concerned about? Or do we think that the body and the brain are deeply interconnected, and if we can maintain the health of the body, then the brain can benefit and last just as long?
A common reaction in viewing what I do is that it's overwhelming, which is true. And the second is that personalization is important. But the way to soothe that anxiety and the way to actually get yourself in a good place, this is for optimal brain health and everything else, is to understand that there are power laws at play that everyone in this room can do. So the 5 power laws, that you look at all the evidence. 1 is don't smoke. 2 is 6 hours a week of exercise. The details of that, it's 4.5 hours in zone 2 through 4. So that's roughly 110 BPM to 159 BPM. It changes a little bit according to your chronological age. And then 90 minutes a week above 159. And then 3 is a BMI between 18.5 and 22.5. 4 is a Blueprint-like diet. And 5 is little to no alcohol. If you do those 5 things, you get roughly 32 years of life. You'd have a life expectancy of around 92. Here's the bad news. That also means you need to stop the bad stuff. Whether it's peanut butter at 11 o'clock at night, or whether it's the cookies or whatever. A lot of people want to do things that are positive for their body and their mind, but they get stuck on the personalization, and then it's overwhelming, and then they do nothing. They feel paralyzed. And so my experience has been these power laws help make it understandable, so people can say, I can do something that affirmatively is positive for my health, and I don't need to feel overwhelmed with this endless list of stuff.
One of the challenges that I have is that my brain wants me to eat Sour Patch Kids.
This is what I'm talking about. Everyone's got their thing, yeah.
And so what tips do you have on how I can overcome that archaic dopamine system that wants me to trash my body?
I call my version of myself Evening Brian. He showed up at 7 p.m. And so he would be on shift when I was tired and I had fought the day's battles at the company. We bathed and fed the kids, had a fight with a partner, and then you settle in and you just want to be soothed from the pain. And sometimes that's the kitchen or the pantry. And I tried to stop this guy hundreds of times from doing it. And no matter how much I promised myself I wouldn't do it, I would do it. And then that would wreck my sleep. It would make the next day awful. I would be grumpy and irritable. It would lower my mood. Had this really compounded effect where life kind of was not great. And so one day, out of desperation, I said, Evening Brian, you're fired. I'm done with you. Like, you make my life miserable. And weirdly, I kind of had a smirk and was like, okay, this is kind of an interesting thought. And I just made a rule that between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m., Brian could not eat, no matter what. He couldn't even eat broccoli. It was just nothing. And so I wrote down his name, Evening Brian. I made a list of all of his clever arguments, like just today, this is a special occasion, just one, all the clever things he said, and very persuasive. And then I would say, thank you for your suggestions, Evening Brian. We are not going to do that. And I was slowly able to wrestle control, and then I could go to other versions of Brian that I didn't like and say, hello, Brian. Like, I appreciate your existence. We're also going to stop doing these things. And remarkably, I would say I have almost eliminated all negative behaviors in my life.
Oh, wow.
I just don't have vices. And it's actually remarkable coming from a place where I was just unable to control myself in the most basic of ways. And it's such a liberating experience where I can now, if I feel the urge to do something, I can look at that and say, I know what pain it's going to cause. It's absolutely not worth it, and I don't want it.
Do you find that meditation or mindfulness plays a role in Blueprint, or how do you consider like times of deep thinking or meditation? Are those part of the protocol?
That really has to do with sleep. And so I would suggest, my suggestion to all of you would be to make sleep your number one life goal. There's literally not anything that is above sleep, because there's nothing that influences your conscious existence more. And when I did a study with my company, Kernel, where I looked at my brain and we gauged my capacity to have willpower, and my willpower went down proportionally relative to how much deep sleep and how much REM sleep I got. And so the less REM and deep I had, the less self-control I had, which increased the likelihood that I would eat poorly that night, which would wreck my sleep again. And so if you want more power to be the person you want, you get more sleep. And this is why sleep is the number one priority, because then it has this domino effect in the opposite direction, leading to other positive things.
So evening Brian's power is correlated to how much sleep?
Entirely. Sleep is your first remedy, your first medication, your first intervention. Nothing beats it in its power. Pop culture is a really great tool for us to speak a common language. It brings bridges between people's understanding. And one of the more remarkable stories that have been told over the past couple of years is Lord of the Rings. And who's seen Lord of the Rings for reference? Okay, good, so we have a lot of fluency. So you remember the battle at the end, Helm's Deep, right? The final battle. And they go out and they try to get all the people of Middle-earth to convene and say, we are going to unite against this common enemy. And it's a story of each culture and their own proclivities. Some of these cultures have conflicts between them, but they come together and they ultimately prevail, but it's a long night and it's precarious. And I think in this moment, I would say all of us of Middle-earth, let us unite. And the foe is death. And to get there, however, you need to follow these steps we've talked about. You need to basically smooth out time. So my education is primarily of reality, is reading biographies. I love traveling in time and going back to the 15th century and the 13th century and the 17th century and trying to see what was happening then, and then who was able to see the future. Like pluck it out of the air, see it, endure all the hate that they got. Everyone thought they were crazy. A few people might have grabbed. But it's a skill set that has been demonstrated throughout history. And so if you occupy that mindset, you say, the people in this room, you are building the future. You initiate endeavors that other people sign up for. You're shaping reality. And so in your mindset in doing this, if you can imagine the thought experiment of the future whispering in your ear, you can divorce yourself from time and place right now and say, all this is probably just going to go away. And then you can incorporate what is really happening, that algorithms are getting very good, they'll complement our abilities, they'll augment our abilities. So what is this longer term horizon? With that as your basis, you can build a future that is distinct from right now. Whereas if you build within the framework that's existent today, you'll be led to make certain decisions that are very 2024 centric. They're not 25th centric, and they may be blind to the realities of what's happening in this larger timescale. And this has, to me, been the most helpful thought experiment. And it would be remarkable if, as a species, if the solve of tribalism, which is the thing that provokes some of the worst acts of violence between humans, if we can solve that and bridge that with a united purpose. And Don't Die is the single most played game across the world every second of every day. It's number one. Capitalism is not even played as much. We breathe every few seconds. We have smoke detectors. We look both ways before we cross the street. We throw out moldy food. So if we say as a species, how could we possibly agree on anything? Don't Die is the only thing we can agree upon. You take one step above Don't Die, and we all disagree on everything. But we can't agree on one thing. And then you bridge that together with the basics of health and wellness. The revolution of the future begins with the food we eat, the time we go to bed, and it's specifically rejecting anything that accelerates your speed of aging and the onset of disease and death. But it's a revolution of thought, of behavior, of norms, and that's what I hope we can lock in, because there's no way this is happening if the community is isolated. It's really everyone together.
Well, we're here to play with you.
Thank you, Brian.
Let's do a few questions.
So we're supposed to spend about a third of our life asleep. So, and you said sleep is our number one priority, or should be. So what would you recommend for a good sleep routine? Like, what kind of things do you do? What could the average person that doesn't have millions of dollars, what could they do?
Yeah, the power laws are really straightforward. So I have my last meal of the day at 11 a.m. And so when my bedtime comes around 8:30, my resting heart rate is 46. If it's 46, I'm gonna have a perfect night's sleep. If I eat at 5 or 6 and something like pasta or breads, my resting heart rate is gonna be 59, and I'll have 75% less REM and deep. So I've always caveated over the years, I've said, you may be different, but every single time the person comes back and says, you're right, the earlier I eat, the better my sleep. So I would encourage all of you to trial that, eat earlier, and if you want to do dinner with family to be, in the social group, fine, just eat very light. But watch your resting heart rate as a predictor of your sleep quality. Then number 2, a lot of you, I don't think have problems with this, no alcohol. It wrecks sleep. Then other things, if you can control your environment, like a blacked out room or eye cover, that's great. This one's a little controversial. If you can sleep alone, it's great, because when you have sorry everyone, when you have 2 people who are trying to synchronize their efforts, you can't control bedtimes, wake times, movements, and it creates a lot of variability. With the protocols I've been doing, I'm potentially the world's best sleeper. I had 8 months of perfect sleep using the Whoop device. Now, no human in history has ever done that. Not to say others couldn't, I just did it when not others didn't, but I wanted to demonstrate you can get predictably high quality sleep. So eating time, no alcohol, sleep environment's really important. I have an 8 sleep mattress, so temperature controlled. That's really been helpful. Then going to bed at the same time every night. Because right now, sleep is a thing that always gets moved. If your favorite show drops, or you're out with a friend, or you need to finish a work project, or whatever, it's always pushed. And if you make sleep a non-negotiable, everything else is second tier to it, it just shifts your mindset. You have to also understand that the psychology of why we think that we're really in grind culture. So there's this idea that if you tell a story about someone who went days on end without sleeping, did some amazing coding and whatever, there's lore and they increase in status in our group. And so that just encourages really bad practices. A lack of sleep does not increase value, it just lowers the value of what's done. So it is really a myth that cheating on sleep is a good idea.
How concerned or not concerned are you about oxalates? And then second, I just bumped into methylene blue a couple of weeks ago. I'm wondering what your take is on that. It's supposed to upregulate your mitochondria.
Yeah. The thing we did at Blueprint that was unique is we looked through every single scientific publication ever published on health span, lifespan. We ranked them according to effect, increase in lifespan or health span extension, and then we scored the believability of the evidence. And then we took that list, 500 things long, and we applied everything in me according to those power laws. And then we did the same thing and put it into a product that could be mass market. And so on oxalates, we definitely have an answer. If you go down that power list of rankings of the strongest evidence, and you get down to a certain level of oxalates or blank or blank or blank, they're important, but there's basically thousands of these things that pop up along those tier. And this oftentimes is the thing that contributes to paralysis, where if a person wants to do a given thing, they hear someone mention something about blank, and then their entire regimen is just now out the door because they're oh, I'm so worried about oxalates that I can't move forward in life, and they miss the power laws. So yes, we watch oxalates. Yes, methylene blue is something that our team is looking at. Also, we always try to come back to the power laws of where to apply focus and effort. And I've seen this conversation happen so many times in our own internal dialogues where it's so easy to go down a track of something and you lose sight because you can play in this 1,000-point area, but oftentimes there's insufficient evidence to break through the stalemate and everyone's just stuck. So sorry not answering it directly. We try to minimize. We also try to move up to the power laws.
How do you see, I guess, AI or Blueprint be able to help shift people's beliefs that then lead them down the right path.
Yeah, I draw the parallel of, when the 13 colonies were trying to figure out what to do with themselves, there was this argument, the king is sturdy and powerful and nice to have, and then there was this new emergent ideas of what if we did this new democracy thing where people voted, and the colonies were split, and it was a vicious debate. Thomas Paine wrote this pamphlet, Common Sense, and he said, look, the monarch, I understand it's stable and we know this thing, but they also stink. They're not really good at managing affairs. We understand what's going on the ground here. Like, we have intimate knowledge of our own needs. But then people are like, you're telling me that this guy's gonna vote? Like, nah, I'm not gonna believe that. And so it was a very vicious debate. But basically, democracy turned out to be a better form of governance than a monarchy. It was just more efficient at managing, it's better information management theory, and it was superior. What I'm proposing is a new way to understand self. And so currently, we have a monarch, our minds. Our monarch decides everything we do. If we want the brownie, we do it. If we walk down and we look at the menu of items, we choose what we want. And what I said is there's a better approach, a democratic approach. Probe the body and ask the body what it needs. Like, hey, heart, what's up? How are you doing? Give me your anatomical measurements, give me your functional characteristics, let's look at the evidence, and create a protocol to satisfy the needs of the heart, and then do that with every single organ of the body. And so I said, monarch, thank you, but you're out. A new system of democratic rule, you're in, and you're gonna be paired with scientific evidence and this protocol for this continuous feedback loop. So now my body takes care of itself, and my mind observes it. And so it's just a new way to understand self that transforms how we have been as a monarch to this new system that is basically superior. To pull this outside of ourselves, we have a self-harm problem as a species. All of us do. We treat planet Earth the same way we treat our bodies. It's an identical relationship. We're destroying our home, our bodies, and we're destroying planet Earth. And so the question is, how do you respond to the existential nature of this crisis? And so, in short, anything my mind spins up about a future preference or want or imagination, I kind of just chuckle at, because it's not working in the current reality of what we're walking into. The future reality may be unimaginable to us in every capacity.
How do you intend to bring this to other cultures and people that don't have the ability financially to maybe follow your protocol exactly? Because I deal with this all the time, where people want this, but they can only afford this.
Yeah. We just made Blueprint into a mass market product. We made my diet into a protocol that costs less than $1,000 a month and has over 100 active therapies embedded in the protocol. So basically my exact diet into a price that is cost competitive with fast food. It potentially is lower cost than groceries. And so we're trying to take a power law of perfect nutrition and take it to the masses. Now there's a power law too, because there is individualization according to things, but we generally have hit that. So yeah, we're basically trying to take the first step of one of the top 5 power laws, consumable by everybody, replacing McDonald's. And then the second thing we're doing is, like, I just did my first gene therapy. It ranks number 7 on our list as the most powerful interventions known to science. And therapy costs $25,000. And I'm in discussions with the company to bring this to the masses. Basically, like, we now have a community of thousands of people that we could do a group buy. And so we could try to become the Costco of longevity therapies and just roll them out to everyone. Blueprint's kind of interesting because we do have a profit incentive in the business, but we kind of don't. We also make everything free. So we're really trying to break this thing out to dramatically reduce costs and scale this to the masses. Almost like a zeitgeist shift of everyone can have enhancement. So yeah, I'm with you. We're right there. We're trying to scale as fast as possible through the basics and advanced stuff.
What is the future of gene mutation?
So we didn't do gene therapy because we didn't think any of them were safe. And that was because the primary delivery vectors of most of the gene therapies out today are via AAVs. And once you get an AAV in, you can't turn off the gene therapy. So if something goes wrong and it has cancer progression, you can't turn it off. And we didn't want to take that gamble. And so what we did is we found a gene therapy that's delivered via a plasmid. And so I got 2 injections on my sides, and a protein sits inside the nucleus, and it basically just generates the protein follistatin. And then if you don't like it, or you don't like the effects, you can just take tetracycline, and it kills it. And so what is encouraging to me is gene therapy, which is the thing that's going to bust open longevity, is here. And we found safer routes for gene therapy. And it still is the 7th highest ranking therapy. It's a 30% extension of life with this therapy. And so it's remarkable. And I'm doing my 2nd gene therapy in 2 months for cognitive enhancement. Same methodology, plasmid induced, generates a protein, tetracycline killed. And so it's cool because this is again why Don't Die matters, is if you take this longer arc and you say, really, where are we at right now? That's what the future whispers, is because we're there.
When you travel,
yeah.
how can you follow your regimen and how do you adapt? You know the second one.
Yeah, so when I travel, it's really hard. Like basically, it is impossible to find healthy food when you travel. We can't go anywhere. So I'll pack most of my stuff, everything I can to travel with, and then when I show up, I'll go to the grocery store and buy what I can. But it's almost impossible to stay true if you're going to a restaurant. It's just like very hard. The Blueprint food stack solves most of that. So this week here in Utah, I've been traveling with the Blueprint stack for the first time, and it solved most of my caloric needs. So that's cool that we basically are making inroads there.
For the sake of Scott's mom, could you explain the nightly erection stuff? Can you expound on that for all of us?
My mom is here.
We could do it later. You could answer the first one.
No, I call my mom every week, and I say, Mom, just so you know, I did the following things this week. For those of you who don't know, I'm pretty rowdy on social media. I've posted several nudes. I talk about my nighttime erections, stuff that is typically taboo in conversation. And so if you really want to understand age, you need to inquire the age of every organ of the body. We say that, I'm blank chronological years old, but a more accurate way of explaining age is to say my heart is anatomically this age, my heart functionally is this age, my diaphragm capacity is this age, and so I have hundreds of age markers throughout my whole body. And so my left ear is 64 because I shot a lot of guns as a kid. In Utah culture, we had a lot of guns, and I was right-handed, so I had the gun like that, exposing my left ear to a lot of the sound. And so I suffered between 2,000 hertz and 8,000 hertz. I'm basically deaf in my left ear. And so understanding the age of my entire body is really helpful. So one of the things we've been looking at is not just sexual function, but males and females have nighttime erections. And as you age, they decrease. And it's actually a really important marker of cardiovascular health, physiological health, and sexual health. And there's a company that created a device for men to measure nighttime erections. It's a little cube that men put on, and it's so small you just forget that it's on. And it's harder to measure female erections. Like there's no device to get at it. A lot of my friends, when they read about this, they would message me privately and say, I think I'm 0. And a lot of them were because grind culture and lack of sleep eliminates that function. And so it's a really good reminder for them that there are serious consequences for not sleeping well. And so we really try to make a point that even though sexual health is largely a taboo topic in society, it's very healthy to make it okay to talk about. And there's also ways to measure it to see how you're doing in life generally. So yeah, we've been doing a lot of therapies to see if we can basically de-age my sexual function in all the things we measure.
A lot of things I do, dying is an option, and that makes that activity more exciting, mountaineering, whatever, or injury. And there's a lot of venturesome people in our culture that they thrive on that, but they also agree with what you're doing. How do you merge the don't die with people, society that needs adventure and adverse to what you're doing?
Yeah, I wrote a book, Don't Die, that is available on YouTube for free. And in the book, I explore this question. I pose the question, is exploration dead? And I have a few characters who represent the argument, and they say, exploration is dead. We know planet Earth, we've mapped every crevice. There's nothing else to explore, and space is so big, we're not gonna be surprised anytime soon. So where do explorers go? And that's really the hypothesis, is I'm saying that the most exciting exploration of existence is on our doorstep. That what we have done for exploration of the physical world has been one thing, but we're now entering into this entirely new existence with the emergence of AI, our interaction with that, and what our minds are going to go. And so I think instead of exploration being dead, we're actually right now at the beginning of the most expansive frontier in history. And that if we can recognize that, we all can sign up to be the explorers of this thing. And the Don't Die framework, you mentioned some of the things you do that's adventurous. If you think about the safety infrastructure that you use, harnesses, seat belts, airbags, tie ropes, like all the things, you are substantially safer now than you were before. So you can take these risks and also have these things. So I was working on this graph this morning. My dad and I were talking. And so this is, you probably can't see it, but I was imagining like on this, so basically this first line is the capital that's been invested in die technologies. So think of it like alcohol and smoking and environmental toxins and all the things that contribute to death. Then you think about the economic curve of don't die. So that includes things like safe water and hygiene practices and antibiotics and seatbelts and all the things that keep us safe on a daily basis. That has also been increasing in spend. And what I'm proposing is in the year 2024, the technologies that accelerate death hit a peak, and then there's a slow downward trend. And the technologies going towards don't die are an exponential increase. And so if you believe that the next gold rush is don't die, then the corresponding personal accompaniment is that exploration along the don't die exponential curve is the place for people like yourself who enjoy that kind of. And so I'd say that it's probably the most delicious future you could ever want. And not dying is going to give you some unknown number of tomorrows for you to play the games you want to play. So it actually is perfectly aligned with who you are and what you want to do. I remember growing up in the church, you're given all the answers. You know exactly what's going on. The only objective of life is to obey the rules to get the prize. The reality I understand now is we don't know the rules. We actually know nothing. Now, that does not mean that we can't cooperate. Like, we can absolutely be together at Helm's Deep and do this together. It does mean that there's a diversity of perspectives, but we do align on this one objective. And that's what I really hope we can do is, like, you step one step above, we're gonna become tribal, and we don't wanna superimpose our views on everyone else, like it's just who we are. There's really an opportunity if you understand our time and place.
Thank you, Brian.